In a recent incident that captured international headlines, a woman in Pakistan found herself trapped in a restaurant surrounded by an angry mob. Hundreds of police officers were dispatched to rescue her after accusations of blasphemy erupted over the Arabic calligraphy on her dress. The calligraphy, mistakenly believed to contain Quranic verses, simply featured the word halwa, meaning beautiful in Arabic. This misunderstanding rapidly escalated, with footage of the scene going viral on social media and forcing the woman to publicly apologize. Such accusations of blasphemy, followed by violent mob justice, are becoming all too common in Pakistan. These incidents reflect the deep-rooted extremism that has taken hold, deterring investment, fracturing society along sectarian lines, and damaging Pakistan's international reputation. Yet, this extremism was not always the norm. So let's find out how Pakistan ended up so polarized and extreme. The roots of religious extremism in Pakistan can be traced to the circumstances of its birth. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the nation's founder, faced a significant challenge in uniting the diverse Muslim interests across British India. Jinnah's political base comprised of three main groups with conflicting demands. First were the elite Muslim landlords in provinces earmarked to become Pakistan's territory: Punjab, Balochistan, Sindh, and the northwest frontier province, now Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Already in charge of their regions, they sought provincial autonomy and a weak central government, not a homeland for all of India's Muslims. The second group consisted of educated Muslim bureaucrats and businessmen living across India in Hindu-majority areas. They envisioned a secular Muslim democracy that would serve as a homeland for Muslims from all over India and feared living under a democracy where they would be an outnumbered minority. The third group, the Islamists, were initially skeptical of the Pakistan project. However, they stipulated that if such a state were to be created, it must be an Islamic theological state governed by religious law. Each group's vision for Pakistan fundamentally contradicted the others, yet Jinnah needed to maintain support from all factions to achieve independence. A shrewd lawyer, Jinnah kept the nation's future intentionally vague to maintain support from everyone. To the Islamists, Jinnah promised Pakistan would be a theocratic state governed according to the Quran and Sunnah. To the Muslim masses across India, he promised Pakistan would be a Muslim democracy for all the subcontinent's Muslims. Whilst to the provincial leaders, Jinnah promised Pakistan would be a loose federation of autonomous provincial units. This strategy, though successful in achieving independence, laid an unstable foundation for the new state. Jinnah's untimely death left Pakistan grappling with unresolved issues, particularly the role of Islam in politics. The secular Jinnah had exchanged his Savile Row suits for the attire of the Muslim elite, adopting the Shawani and Karakul cap. He employed Islamic rhetoric in his campaign, making Islam and Pakistan synonymous. He initiated the practice of labeling any Muslim who opposed the Muslim League as a traitor. Political adversaries were denounced as infidels, betrayers of Islam. Even devout Muslims who opposed partition, like Abdul Ghaffar Khan and Maulana Azad, were labeled as traitors and non-believers. This tactic of branding opponents as traitors and infidels became a recurring theme in Pakistani politics. Instead of engaging in political debate, politicians in Pakistan often attempt to out-Islam one another, labeling rivals as non-Muslims. Additionally, the weak political foundation Jinnah created allowed the military to easily seize control from politicians. Ruling with an iron fist, they intensified Pakistan's Islamic political culture and radicalized its society. While the creation of Pakistan laid the foundation for the use of Islam in politics, the society and its institutions were not initially extremist. Early leaders like Ayub Khan and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto were secular-minded, often paying lip service to Islam, but by no means Islamists. This changed dramatically with Pakistan's first hardline Islamist leader, General Muhammad Zia-ul-Haq, a military dictator who ruled with an iron hand. Though personally devout, Zia used Islam ruthlessly for political and strategic ends. Isolated internationally for executing his predecessor, Bhutto, Zia used Islam as his support base, claiming Pakistan was not Islamic enough, and initiated a process of Islamization. Over the next decade, Zia transformed Pakistan's political landscape, creating a near-theocratic government. His policies empowered society's most violent and intolerant impulses, undermining the foundations of a pluralistic and democratic structure. Zia's Islamization policies affected every aspect of society: education, politics, and women's rights. He enforced his interpretation of Islam, aiming to establish an Islamic state and enforce Sharia law. Zia established Shariat courts to judge legal cases using Islamic doctrine. New criminal offenses and punishments, such as whipping and stoning, were added to the law. School curricula were overhauled to remove un-Islamic material, and public spaces were required to accommodate prayer. His introduction of the Hudud ordinances blurred distinctions between adultery and assault. Robbery became punishable by amputation, and activists from the Islamist parties were appointed to government positions to ensure his agenda continued after his death. Decades after his death, the Islamic clergy have managed to hold on to the space they were given during General Zia's rule in Pakistan. While we will examine the impact of some of Zia's legal changes later in the video, one of the most enduring effects of his era was the situation that unfolded across the border in Afghanistan. With Islam as his domestic policy, Zia seized the opportunity to make jihad his foreign policy during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Pakistan, backed by Saudi Arabia and the United States, supported and armed jihadist groups to fight the Soviets. Maddrassers began promoting a radical form of Islam, encouraging jihad for financial gain. Radical clerics gained influence as resources shifted away from traditional tribal elders. The Afghan jihad led to a significant influx of money, arms, and radical ideologies into Pakistan. Although the Soviets eventually withdrew, many founders and leaders of terrorist organizations attacking Pakistan today were part of the jihad efforts from this era. Pakistani jihadi groups that fought the Soviets turned their focus toward the Kashmir cause once the Soviets withdrew. It is understood that Pakistan's inter-services intelligence directed them that way, to aid what had begun as an organic resistance in Kashmir against Indian rule in 1989. While these groups initially avoided targeting Pakistani civilians or the state directly, they have expanded their narrative beyond liberating Kashmir to include vehemently anti-India rhetoric, as well as anti-Israel, anti-America, and anti-West sentiments. They claim their ultimate goal is to impose Sharia across South Asia and express support for a global jihad. As Hillary Clinton, then US Secretary of State, warned in 2011, Pakistan couldn't keep snakes in their backyard and expect them only to bite their neighbors. This unwieldy concept of jihad has led to the radicalization of large segments of the population, a strategic blunder that has left Pakistan diplomatically isolated and has driven away potential investors. The military's policy has clearly differentiated between those militants it believes pose a direct threat to the Pakistani state, such as the TTP, and those it believes are of strategic use to it, like Lashkar-e-Taiba, a group targeting India in the pursuit of freeing Kashmir. However, they fail to recognize that encouraging and funding jihadists always comes back to bite them. Those who believe it is their divine mission to impose strict Sharia law by force can never be reliable allies. Despite the direct security threat these groups pose to Pakistan, the country's India-obsessed military continues to believe they can be contained, or that their strategic value outweighs the risks. Another lasting impact of Zia's era is the Maddrassers that became deeply entrenched in Pakistani society. Funded with millions of dollars, these Maddrassers emerged as a powerful force that the government struggled to control. For many Pakistanis, they are the only educational option for their children, despite widespread reports of abuse and indoctrination. Even without direct terrorist ties, the strict ideologies they promote often lead to intolerance. Maddrassas are inherently sectarian, each teaching its own interpretation of Islam. Deobandi Maddrassas oppose the Barelvis, and vice versa, while both reject Shia beliefs. Saudi Arabia funds Wahhabi Maddrassas, while Iran supports Shia ones. There is little known about their curricula, and no official oversight exists to monitor their teachings. Efforts to regulate or register madrassas to curb radical teachings are strongly opposed by Islamist groups. Military dictator Pervez Musharraf earmarked $100 million to reform madrassas, but the project was shelved due to intense opposition within the country. Those in formal education are not immune to indoctrination by the state. After taking power, General Muhammad Zia-ul-Haq made Pakistan studies compulsory for all students. Pakistan studies is rooted in ideology as opposed to history and critical analysis. These textbooks have preached falsehoods, hatred and bigotry. They have constructed most non-Muslims, especially Hindus, as evil and primordial enemies, glorified military dictatorships and omitted atrocities committed during the 1971 Indo-Pak War. The independent histories of Pakistan's provinces are glossed over, as are ethnic heroes like Abdul Ghaffar Khan and Bhagat Singh. Such distortions in education have fueled religious intolerance and extremism. The extremist ideologies embedded in education and society have led to a legal environment where intolerance is codified into the law. This climate of legal extremism became starkly evident in 2011 with the assassination of Salman Taseer, the governor of Punjab. Taseer, known for his liberal views, had championed the case of Asia Bibi, a Christian woman sentenced to death for blasphemy, in 2010. He was one of the few politicians vocally opposing Pakistan's blasphemy laws, labeling them man-made and a black law, and advocating for their reform. Taseer's murder highlighted the deep-seated intolerance in Pakistani society. Following his assassination, thousands gathered to commemorate his killer, Mumtaz Qadri, and subsequently stormed Islamabad's Red Zone, which houses Parliament and the Supreme Court. Their demands included the release of Sunni clerics charged with offences, recognition of Qadri as a martyr, assurances that the blasphemy laws would remain unchanged, and the removal of non-Muslims from key government positions. The protesters blockaded the capital for 4 days, causing chaos and significant damage, prompting the government to call in the army for order. Ultimately, the government conceded to their demands, assuring no amendments to the blasphemy laws and no clemency for those convicted under them. The clerics won the round, and the government released a statement saying the blasphemy laws would not be changed. 2 laws perpetuate extremism in Pakistan: the anti-Ahmadi and blasphemy laws. Instituted under Zia's regime in the 1980s, these laws criminalized perceived infractions against Islam, with severe punishments for blasphemy. The anti-Ahmadi laws define non-Muslims as those who do not believe in the finality of the Prophet Muhammad, thus legally barring Ahmadis from calling themselves Muslims or holding high office. Zia expanded these laws with clauses 298b and 298c, making it illegal for Ahmadis to pose as Muslims. They cannot call their places of worship mosques or recite the azan. The issue is not whether Ahmadis are Muslims, but whether the state should define what a Muslim is. Pakistan has declared Ahmadis outside Islam's fold, and politicians often denounce them to affirm this stance. Consequently, when violence against Ahmadis occurs, most politicians remain silent. This silence fosters an environment where bigotry begins with attacks on Ahmadis and expands into inter-Islamic violence against other sects. For instance, Prime Minister Imran Khan appointed Ahmadi economist Atif Mia from Princeton University to his Economic Advisory Council. At 43, Mia is regarded as one of the world's leading young economists in finance and macroeconomics. However, pressure from Islamist groups forced Imran Khan to make an uncomfortable and immediate U-turn, claiming he was unaware that Mia was an Ahmadi, and reaffirming his commitment to the finality of the Prophet. If the ultra-religious right can compel a prime minister to reverse course, they can easily intimidate ordinary citizens into submission. Violence against Ahmadis is rampant. In October 2005, gunmen attacked an Ahmadi mosque in Mandi Bahauddin, killing 8. In the largest attack, terrorists struck 2 Lahore mosques on May 28, 2010, killing 96 Ahmadis and wounding over 100. Attacks on Ahmadi places of worship and targeted killings are commonplace. Allowing mobs to take the law into their own hands is a slippery slope, but calling out this blatant disregard for law and order is often avoided, as it may be seen as an insult to the finality of the Prophet. Consequently, bureaucrats, politicians, and even the army refrain from addressing the issue. Both the blasphemy and anti-Ahmadi laws empower extremists by allowing vague accusations to lead to severe punishments. These laws are frequently exploited to settle personal grudges, and the harsh penalties ensure that the accused suffer irreparable harm, regardless of the charge's validity. Most of Pakistan's political class would like to repeal these laws, but intense backlash from the religious hard right makes this nearly impossible. Years of intertwining religion with politics, using jihad as a tool of foreign policy, and embedding extremism into the legal system have fostered an environment where radical and extremist ideologies thrive in Pakistan. Extremism has deeply fractured Pakistani society, resulting in mob violence, sectarian conflict, and a culture of reactionary aggression. This turmoil not only undermines social cohesion, but also tarnishes Pakistan's image internationally. Negative media coverage of extremist incidents has damaged diplomatic relationships and discouraged foreign investment, stifling economic development and progress. If left unchallenged, extremism will persist in defining Pakistan's destiny, eclipsing its potential. I have been your host, Albert. Thank you for watching, and please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.